A nice, diverse kettle is what I've got on the fire. Let me start pouring out the first cup of coffee this morning and welcome political analyst and university lecturer. He is one of the respected political analysts in the country, and I am happy to have him. As always, he is Dr. Winford James. Dr. James, good morning to you, sir.
Good morning, Rennie B.
It is good to hear you as always. You sound in good spirits as you do every Sunday morning.
Okay.
I know that time is of the essence, so we're going to stay on it. If you have me on speakerphone, sir, and it's possible you can pick me up on the headpiece, that would be great. I hear an echo coming out of there.
Yeah, take it off.
Dr. James, many analysts, including your good self, weighed in on the first year of the PNM. Some were severe in their evaluation, seemingly, to me anyway, unmindful of the 60 to 65% revenue shortfall and almost maxed out credit limit, an already unacceptable crime position, and a voluminous unpaid commitment or commitments, including contractors and wages, in many unions. I mean, this is all that was inherited. I wonder, why would analysts expect anything else but a tough year? And should that not have been tempered, the aforementioned, been tempered in their negative appraisal of the first year of the government?
Well, I think it is true to say that all analysts believe that the year was tough. I don't think there's any analyst who denies that the year was tough. But what some of them apparently have been claiming seems to be unfair. That is, in the context of that toughness, government should have done much better, but they do not specify the ways that the government could have done better as they criticize the way the government handled the economy, handled the governance of the country. But I think everybody agrees that the year was tough. It's easy to say that, of course, because we see signs of that. We can't escape the signs of toughness. Yes, one of the signs is that there has been no developmental work. Another is, as you've said, is that certain debts have not been paid. Debts to public servants and debts to contractors. So there is no doubt. We've had the Minister of Finance going on the road looking for money, looking for investments in this country. And the report was that that roadshow was successful. So I'm saying, yes, the year was tough. The question is, could the government have done better, and how and in what ways?
I like the way you said that, because most of the times folks give their analysis and they are not given specifically what could have been done differently. I mean, almost none of the nation's issues, Dr. James, began in the last year. Many opine that the government should have had an idea coming into power and should be able to walk and chew gum at the same time. But this is not chewing gum. This is operating with no money. It is more like driving on a highway at 90 miles per hour, which is an already unsustainable speed, then realizing that you have a severe leak of brake fluid. Now, you've got two choices. You can either pull the handbrakes and come to a complete stop and possibly damage the car, or you can put the car in a very low gear, and that way you manage the decrease in speed. You avoid crashing, and you avoid wrecking the car. That is an option, but folks have to look at it in that sense, I believe, because absent that is to be dealing with a different set of facts. Am I wrong?
I don't think you are. I don't know if the analogy is the best, but let me say this, that government has a responsibility and a duty to explain to the public what it is doing, what it did. As it went along in that year, government had the responsibility to make the kinds of arguments that you are summarizing here now. And one of the questions the government has to face is, given the negativity of the situation that you inherited, given the need to moderate, to manage and hold things, on an even kind of keel, did you communicate with the people to make them understand that? Because there will always be political enemies, and there will be those people who, regardless of what, are going to say, you are in government, fix it. Of course, we know that that is very childish, and the thing is, government cannot escape blame here. Government has to answer, well, if the thing was so bad, did we engage with the people constantly so that they would know? No, that's a question for them to answer. But going back to an earlier point, one of the reasons why we have this unchecked negativity from some political commentators is that we don't ask them to give us alternatives. We don't ask them, we don't insist that if you find something is wrong, I'm not talking about the ordinary man of the street, right? I'm not talking about that guy.
Right.
I'm talking about experts, people who ought to know, people who are qualified in politics and government and economics. If you say that this is not the way government should have gone, or this is the way, but there are things they did not do, then the reporters, the journalists should demand of them to give you an alternative.
I fully agree with you on that because, anybody can, it's like opinions is like criticism. You don't need to be qualified to do that. You can just go ahead and say, I didn't like this, I didn't like this, I didn't like this. You didn't do this, you didn't do this, you didn't do this. And then the question, I think it's incumbent on anybody reporting the findings of these analysts to ask the question, all right, give me some possible alternatives.
Exactly. And so we didn't have much of that from the recent commentary that I was able to listen to and read. We didn't have much of that. But yes, the government had a hard time. And if you have the time, we probably can ask, well, what else might they have done? And if you ask me, I would say they have not worked on diversification so far as I know, as much as they should have. Mm-hmm. Because, the whole genesis of this problem was our excessive dependence on the energy sector, on energy prices, oil and gas that were high, mostly for most of the term of the previous government, and then plummeted towards the end, yes? So we know that. But this is not a new story. In fact, this has been going back for a long time.
Yes.
We have been so lulled into this kind of financial comfort. It's a false sense of comfort because, we know at the individual level that you must have your eggs in different baskets and so on, right? We know that. We know that there are countries that beef up all their areas just in case one suffers. I'm talking about the areas of the economy that generate foreign exchange.
Indeed.
And so on, right?
That same diversification, and everyone agrees on that, but there are people who are saying, well, as you said, even best that you qualified it. You said, I don't know what they are working on thus far, because diversification is not something you can wake up tomorrow and immediately have up and running. It does take some time and a whole lot of planning.
It does, but it's probably easier to talk about it now than it was a few years ago.
Yeah, more susceptible ears.
Yeah,
yes.
because you see, this government, it is true that they were in power in the opposition for 5 years, and they were looking to be the alternative government. Mm-hmm. It is also true that they were part of a party that has ruled the country for far longer than any other party.
True.
So they had that. Now, they are the ones who really built this economy. We don't have to argue about that. The PNM are the ones that built this economy. Now, so the point is, and they are the ones, if you go back to their budgets, they're the ones who've been talking about diversification budget after budget. Mm-hmm. The question is, what can they tell us, because they have not been telling us, what can they tell us that their efforts at diversification have produced as a kind of a buffer? Mm-hmm. So when the times become hard, we can rely. I'm not talking about taxation now. That's a different story. I'm talking about stimulating other areas of the economy to produce foreign exchange.
Yes.
Now, I am not an economist, but I believe I read, and there are some ideas that we can talk about. But we also have to ask ourselves whether the Ministry of Planning has been availing itself of the data that CSO must have. Now, that data has not been, my understanding is, analyzed in a way that the the ministry can just go and pick up the analysis and the findings, right?
Forgive me a second, Dr. Winford James. Did I misunderstand something? You said CSO and you said would have as against should have?
Well, let's say would have, because I believe the data is there. CSO has more data than we talk about. The problem is that the data has not been analyzed in such a way that you can just run and get it. Maybe they need more staff. Maybe government needs to prioritize that office far more than it does now. But I'm sure the data is there.
Then
there are other independent observers who have gone for the data and analyzed it themselves. Now, if government has the means of employing people to do that, because government is the richest of all of us, isn't it? So they can go and they can have teams of researchers getting into the data, categorizing it, analyzing it, and saying, okay, on the basis of this, we can do this.
But you can do a lot more things incorrectly and get away with it if you do not have the data to contradict you. And when I hear,
I'm saying we have the data.
What I'm saying is when I hear the many people who speak of the absence of information at the CSO and match that with what you're saying is the complete opposite. So I wonder if folks have been touting the lack of information from the CSO for the purpose of getting away with what they've been getting away with.
I don't know. What I can tell you, and I have done my own independent checks because I have access to experts, independent experts who have taken some of that data and analyzed it, right? My point is government is in charge. Government needs to make policy, especially the Ministry of Planning, which means that they need to have data and information and findings. Color member, based probably on what he got from the Minister of Finance, or the Ministry of Planning, came back for the review and told us, well, we didn't do anything, we didn't have enough knowledge, we didn't have enough information. Now, how can that be? You follow? How can that be? I am saying you have data there that should inform you. You can go in and categorize it, as I said before, and you can do the analyses that need to be done. But you have to do something like that. Otherwise, you're going to be guessing, or you're going to be so cautious that you do nothing as the effort to win the information moves at the pace of a snail. So I'm saying that information is there.
Okay.
Now, Ministry of Planning should get that information. And I'm now talking about diversification. I'm talking about the basis, the data basis for the effort, the greater effort of diversification is there. And I'm thinking of one of the areas in which we can make money, foreign exchange, is precisely in the entertainment industry, the arts, the cultural components of the economy. Yes? And those are areas that are being de-emphasized. When in other countries there are areas that make a lot of money. Now, that's only one area, but I'm saying that's an example. Now, it's not for me to talk like that. It's for government to talk like that. Government should say to us, look, our oil prices have dropped. Our gas prices have dropped. We are under $50 a barrel, right? It's in the mid-range now. I think it's about 44, somewhere about that. It keeps shifting.
Constantly fluctuating.
It's about that. And it's the same thing with natural gas. It's not gone beyond $2 yet. Yeah? It's hovering around $2. And it's getting... The Prime Minister is right that you cannot get more from less in that sense. But then you can take what is less and diversify it to generate income to be able to develop the country in a way that is not happening just yet.
And I want to be optimistic that is being looked at, but unless I'm being too generous, I feel that sometimes you have to slow the cart down, look at the situation, analyze it totally. You know what our parents used to tell us, measure twice and cut once.
Yes. No, you don't know. I mean, we can say that, and we have to slow it down. The question is whether we should expect a government to do that. In so slowing down as to not take action on other areas of the economy which are so promising. Can we ease the government up on that? Their slow crawl, their caution, their conservatism because all these things are on display, you know that? What's not on display is aggressive policy making and policy action.
Well, you also made a very good point. Listeners, in case you just tuned in, this is Brunch on 107.7. The voice you're hearing is that of the very knowledgeable political analyst, Winford James. We're happy to have the professor with us. I want to make this point, Doctor, because I feel sometimes that when the more you speak this morning, it sounds to me as though I should be paying attention to the cabinet shuffle that may come, because from what you identified a moment ago is the inability to articulate to the general population the plan and the actions of the government.
Yes. Now, now, we don't know that replacements are going to be better. In fact, when the crop were installed, we knew that there were some older guys who had a certain familiarity with government and who would do that. We also knew that there was some pretty noisy new Turk as part of the cabinet. But we don't hear them. I don't know the people of this country know who their ministers are, and because their ministers don't speak. Now, there were at the beginning a few who were the spokeswomen and spokesmen, mostly spokesmen, by the way. We weren't hearing the female voices of the cabinet, now that they won government. Now, the thing about it is, how can you run a country if you are holding yourself away from the people that you're supposed to represent? How can you run a country if the decisions that cabinet takes, and those decisions, of course, are informed by ministerial contributions, as we know? How can you run a country if we are not with you as you go along?
There is something to be said about the model that was used. Many thought the reason for the Ministry of Communications, the Communications Ministry, is to articulate all coming out. However, the downside of that is unless you have a fine-tuned machine happening in that Ministry of Communication, you're going to have what you are identifying, folks having no idea of what is coming out and who is doing what.
Well, even more serious is the fact that if you give the Ministry of Communications that role, you are de-emphasizing your contact with your people. We elected people to the Parliament and therefore into the cabinet. We didn't elect a Ministry of Communication.
You want to hear from the representatives.
Who ought to know what their constituents want, What is it that needs to be done to improve the various constituencies across the country? And it's not only the government constituencies, the opposition constituencies as well. So this idea of silent ministers is not going to work. Because if only because we want to know what is it they're doing, what is the contribution, what can they do, how do they have a certain integrity as parliamentarians or as ministers, or it's all up to a few who have a better sense of things, of the decisions that are taken, and who, of course, will be, just in case the neophytes misspeak or say the wrong thing, we, the senior members of the cabinet, one or two of them, are more to be trusted in that regard. But we don't build a democracy that way.
I got you. Dr. James straight saying that those who are elected should be the ones speaking to the nation, not one ministry. We are talking about the first 100 years of the PNM. There is also so if you had to look at the 100 years, would you say that a little more leverage should be given them, or you're saying that enough leverage has been given?
Well, I think enough. I mean, if the Prime Minister speaks as if he understands that too. I saw that interview on CC, and I thought he was demonstrating an understanding that 1 year is sufficient. They have to deliver in the second year, although he realizes as well that he has 4 more years. But if he wants to stay alive politically, then he has to deliver. But, the best way to do that sort of thing, is to really consult with the various interest groups all the time. Consult with your constituency. There's an absence. Whenever these ministers talk, including the Prime Minister, when they speak, the people who put them in power are absent. The people who are invisible and inaudible as well. It's almost as if we are a apart from what is going on there. That's an old model that we have inherited. It hasn't worked for us, you know.
Yes.
We have been lucky because of a certain ethnicity-based politics. But, you know, the world is changing, and on social media, people are getting more expressive. People are getting more independent and more outspoken, yeah?
And that is why the dialogue has to be the only way that we go
and
about
actually,
it.
what they do is probably far more important than what we're hearing from the Prime Minister, because people ought to govern themselves ultimately.
Whether it is 100 years or just 1 year, you realize that dialogue is absolutely necessary. Doctor, I know your time is tight, so I'm watching it for you. At the same time, I cannot have you move without answering two questions for me. What's your opinion on the Las Altrias Commission of Inquiry? The PM called it a total and complete waste of time and money.
Well, first of all, I haven't read the report.
There is a summary available.
Yes, but I haven't read the report. The PM was able to do so. Secondly, the PM, I think the PM is right, because we know that not only this particular commission of inquiry, but all commissions of inquiry have been wastes of time because they have involved large expenditure, large sums that have gone mostly to lawyers. I don't know that that's a contribution to this country. There are people, to my mind, who are contributing to this country far more than the lawyers who participate in commissions of inquiry.
Of the $24 million the Prime Minister made very clearly, some people made out really good on that.
Precisely. And these are people, sometimes without him, they're just lucky to be apprenticed to a more senior lawyer. They are more capable or more knowledgeable. But apart from that, we have not been able to indict, to charge, to arrest, to jail, to fine anybody. It's almost as if they're saying, let us know, and that is going to be a kind of something that will ease our spirits. We are psychologically released or something.
Or cynically, another way to postpone, pass the ball down the line.
Yeah, or to appear to be doing something, but at the end of the day, where is the advantage? How does the country get improved as a result of all that expenditure? So I think I must agree with the Prime Minister that based on what has happened to other commissions of inquiry, that this one might be a waste of time as well.
The Prime Minister is going to address the nation tonight. Quickly, what do you expect from that? What are you anticipating?
I found that decision a little bit intriguing, strange, because you know why? Because we are going to have a budget before the month ends, right? And that budget will have a statement, of course. The statement will tell us what we need to know. What's the way forward? What are the initiatives, the policy initiatives, to make the country work? It's not simply keeping people in their jobs, but basically to earn more, earn more, develop the place, right? What are these initiatives? Now, we know that the budget statement is coming to do that.
Right, so that's why I think tonight is going to be something different.
Well, is it that there are some developments within his cabinet that are so irrepressible that they have to be talked about, they have to be brought into the open? Because, things happen in cabinets that we don't need to know about.
That's right.
Did something happen? Did he and the Attorney General fall out? Is he going to fire the Attorney General? It cannot be that he's calling us because of Marlene MacDonald, right? You agree on that?
I agree on that. I just view this almost like a State of the Union address. Basically, this is the direction we want to go, which in itself primes you for the budget.
Well, I suppose. Which means now that that's probably a new development in our politics, that just before the budget, the Prime Minister, reading the public mood, comes and he prepares us, or he preps us for what the budget will be dealing with. Now, in that case, I suppose there's nothing wrong with that.
I'm wondering if that's the case, because narrative, you can arrive anything you want to from numbers, but if you set the narrative before, then you have the minds already in place for what is to come.
Right. Well, yeah, if that is it, I wondered about that. I don't know, but because the issues are, to my mind, very clear. Are we going to get into some development initiatives? Are we going to pay off some of the contractors at least to allow developmental works to start? Do we have some new initiative on crime, which is out of hand? And I hear the president of the country saying that the environment trumps crime. Now, there are all kinds of issues with respect to what he has said. The point is, he has identified the environment as being critical, and he was looking ahead to sustainability for our great-grandchildren, for future generations. So it's very difficult to say, except that there's some new knowledge that there's probably a bombshell, I don't know, that should come to the public. Or, as you were indicating a while ago, it could be that he wants to prepare the national mood for what the budget is going to focus on.
Well, we'll wait and see what happens with that. Dr. Winford James, thank you so much, as always, for taking the time with me this morning. I ran up against the clock because, I can keep you there for an hour. But you did tell me that you have commitments, and I do respect that. Thank you so much for taking the time to be with us Inside Brunch this morning. You have yourself a wonderful day, sir.
You too.
And I thank you so much. You're Inside Brunch. 10:27 is the time. Going to deal with the weather forecast, by the way. You should know about that. It's 28 degrees, and we're expecting that today into tonight, we're doing between 28 and 26 degrees. We'll be, dancing between that. Cloudy conditions, risk of thunderstorms possible this afternoon. As we continue Inside Brunch, we'll be talking Zika virus coming up.